Welcome to the Tactical Business Podcast. I am your host, Wade Skalski, and today we're going to be a little more casual with one of our talking about current events and what's going on with my sometimes co-host, but always rocking the awesome beard, Jon McCoy. John, how are you doing?
I'm good, Wade. How are you doing?
I'm really good. I missed you, man. You were tooling around with the family in parts unknown. You were a traveling man. How did that work out for you?
It was, as I always hope, when I'm towing a 37-foot RV, it was almost completely uneventful. We had one blowout, which I always predict at least one trailer tire going, and it was 5 miles from our second stop. Like we almost could see the gate. Thank God it happened because I'd actually just driven through Fort Worth. So we're like right outside the gate, and wife's like, "Did you hear that?" I'm like, "No." And she's like, "I think you blew a tire." I'm like, "I don't think so." So she's like, "Well, just pull over and check." And I did. And of course, it had absolutely blown a tire. So
Yeah.
besides that, very uneventful. We went to, first stop was south of Fort Worth, little lake called Lake Whitney, south and west. And we were there for a few days. Then we went to Texoma, which is one of our favorite places right on the Red River. And then we ended up around Tulsa. Oklahoma is always very colorful. And then we came home 2 days ago.
So, but you keep telling me you keep telling me sending these Telegram things where there's like a pack of feral wild dogs terrorizing the campground.
Okay, now this is a real story. Yes. So I said Oklahoma is always colorful. We actually, this whole trip was revolved around a wedding in Guthrie. But we have friends in Tulsa, and we're like, well, we'll try that we don't see very often. So we're like, all right, we're going to kind of go in between. And this little lake is west of Tulsa, but east of Guthrie. It's kind of in the middle. And Guthrie is just north of Oklahoma City. And so these are all Corps of Engineer campgrounds. And because I get a veterans discount. So all you vets out there, user discount, 50% off. And so they all have what they say their rules are for the gate, but no two places are the same. Texoma has never, ever closed it. They didn't even have camp hosts this time. Some places are super anal, and they always close it at 10 o'clock at night. So you just don't know what you're going to get. So where we were staying was actually a really small campground, and they had a nice little parking lot right outside the gate. And I'm like, hey, if it's closed, I don't really care. It wasn't more than an eighth of a mile from the little parking lot outside the gate to our camper. And it's like, you can still walk through. It's not a big deal. So we get in, late, like almost midnight, and the gate's closed. I'm like, that's fine. It's whatever. We're expecting it. And then we pull off in the parking area, and these vicious dogs surround our van and start barking at us. There's two German shepherds, and the third is black and looks like those police dogs, those Czech police dogs. I don't know what they are. Anyway, so I get out like an idiot, and one doesn't charge me. It gets really close. I jump back in. I'm like, okay, this is kind of weird. And so we're sitting there trying to figure out what to do, because like we can almost see our camper, but I'm not getting out. We have 6 kids in there too. And another truck shows up late, and they pull off, and the gal jumps out, and the dogs surround her, and she jumps back in. The guy tries it. He jumps back in. We're like, this is ridiculous. So I call the sheriff's department, and he comes out, real friendly guy. And he's like, man, I don't even know why they closed the gate. I'm like, hey, man, I don't know. I'm just staying here. So the gate camp host is her trailer. It's a volunteer position, but they get free place to stay, basically. It's right by the gate. So he pulls up there, and he turns on his giant LED light bar. It's like as bright as the surface of the sun. All right outside her window. And he starts hitting the foghorn feature on his siren. I mean, 20 minutes. I don't know what kind of like ambient stupor she was in, but I'm like, first off, how do you not hear the dogs? They were out there for an hour barking. Finally, she comes out. She looks, disoriented. And the cop's like, hey, what the hell are you doing? What's going on? I can't hear it all. She grabs a couple of log chains and ties these dogs up, and she goes and pops open the gate, drive through. All right. So I'm like, all right, well, we got that out of the way. Next day, park ranger's driving by, and I flag him down. I'm like, hey, you need to talk to this park attendant about her dogs. And he goes, those aren't her dogs. I'm like, okay. It's like, those are strays that someone dumped. I'm like, all right. And he goes, animal control won't pick them up because there's no room in Tulsa. Apparently, in the entire city of Tulsa, there's no room for 3 dogs. I'm like, okay. And he's like, sheriff's department won't, dispatch these dogs. They won't shoot them unless they attack someone. sitting there like, you're telling me that this campground is being held hostage by 3 stray dogs. And he just looks at me and goes, yeah, pretty much. So the rest of the time is pretty uneventful. We figured out that they only keep the gates closed during peak hours over the weekend. So outside of that, it's open, and we just drove through. But I was just sitting there and I couldn't rep. I actually gave him a 1-star review on Google. I had to. And I write this long, essay saying it's a fine campground, except for it's being roamed by a pack of wild dogs. Like this isn't.
That's not an amenity. Yeah, that's not an amenity.
No, because I mean, they were dropping their giant doggy bombs in our spot while we weren't there. Like our dogs were locked up in the trailer. I'm like, okay, and there's only one other camper there. And actually, I gotta tell you, I called the sheriff's department twice in 2 days. That's more than I've called 911 in the past 20 years. Because next to us, the only other camper there, we hadn't seen the whole 5 days we were there, and we heard a dog in there. No lights on, nothing. So I called for a wellness check the next night. And I think the cops were probably like, what is going on at this place? So we were more than happy to leave.
Yeah, well, we can cross that one off the list. Now you know. So,
Yeah.
but it's an adventure, so that's always
Yes.
good. Well, good. Well, good. Well, I'm glad you're home safe, and so we can start chatting about some fun stuff with the firearms.
Yes.
And yeah. So, what are we talking about first today, man? What do you want to chat about first?
Let's go with this very high-end ZeroTech optic. It is a 5x30 by 56. It has 2 different reticle options. And first off the bat, this is not like your Bushnell or your Primary Arms. Like this is a almost $3,000 scope. So if you have a lot of disposable income and you have a sweet, rifle on a chassis, you want to, reach out and touch something, this is your bag. But if you're just talking about tagging a whitetail every year or white-tailed deer every year, probably a little excessive. So I took a look at it, and it's pretty slick. So this sucker has, it's adjustable out to 30 times, which I mean, that's, your standard deer scope that comes on every, Savage or Remington. It's a 3x9. So your max power is 9 times. So this bottom end is 5, adjustable up to 30 times. So, I mean, you're like talking way out there. And it has up to 35 milliradians of elevation and 30 milliradians of windage. So those are just mil, And I actually had to do a little bit of digging because I'm like, well, what exactly is this? And I don't know. Do you know what a milliradian is?
I watched Oppenheimer last night, so I know what a kiloton is and a megaton. No, I don't know. Well, this is America, sir. We don't deal in the metric system.
Well, actually, it's not. It is 1/1000th. So each click, each milliradian, so each mil click is 1/1000th of the distance traveled. So that's how it breaks down. And so it's kind of like a MOA click. That's the basic idea there. I thought that was pretty cool. Comes in 2 different reticles. I took a look at each one of them. One of them is the RMG2. It looks kind of like a standard crosshair, but it's got little tick marks all under the bottom, adjusting for windage and distance. Thought that was pretty slick. These are all argon purged, so you're not going to get any of that disgusting, moisture accumulating in your scope. That's pretty rad. The other reticle is the Tremor 3 FFP reticle, and it is made for a little bit more speed for acquiring targets a little quicker. So I don't do long distance shooting. I attempt to shoot deer. I'm not very good at that either, but this seems pretty slick.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, and I always try to tell people that are new to firearms, that just think, oh, guns are you just point and the thing goes bang. Well, yeah, it's true that the thing does just point and go bang, but you can go as deep as you want.
Oh my gosh.
Any aspect of firearms. If you want to do long range precision shooting, can be a very granular and expensive endeavor for you to do that. And this is one of those things where it's like, I would never have the ability. I just don't have the ability. I could work myself up to this kind of precision shooting and need for this, but I don't have any need for this type of thing. but it is good to know that you're never going to outrun your gear now.
Yeah. Yeah. This is basically a real life math equation. That's what long distance shooting is, like a series of math equations. And the guys that get into it, like you said, I mean, they go really deep because I mean, every caliber is different, but then you start, I mean, it's kind of like NASCAR where it seems like you said, the concept is very simple. You know, you're punching a hole in a sheet of paper that's a long way away from you. All right. And the way I say it's like NASCAR, and I'm not a NASCAR guy, don't let the beard fool you, but it actually really fascinated me. I was reading Joe Gibbs' book years ago, and he was coach of the Skins, I believe. And then I saw the hat before you got on, so that's pretty cool. But he also owned a race team. Interstate Battery was his sponsor. So every single track, they actually have to put different tires on. They have to tune the suspensions. You know, all these little things. You think they're just punching gas and going, 180 miles an hour. That's not really what's going on. And that's kind of how this is too. That, within every caliber, I mean, the difference of a couple of grains or just the composition of a bullet changes everything. So, I mean, this is really deep stuff. And I guess if you get into it, man, that's really cool. But I'm with you. I just don't have the patience for it.
Well, and I mean, the thing about it is that it's sorry, my dog is being a nuisance right now. The thing about it is that it's a smart person's endeavor, right? Like,
Yes.
you're not going to outsmart firearms. It's just you're just not going to. And so it's like you said, is like if you, however deep you want to go and however technically you want to go, that you have that capability. And this type of scope and precision shooting is one of those areas that you can really get into gear and you can really, make a craft out of it, because that these people that can can hit those targets so far away and do all the required math. Some of them can do that in their heads. They can just kind of do it from feel. It's amazing.
I know. Yeah. I can't even do it with a calculator. It really is amazing.
And it's a talent, right? And it's a craft. And so stuff like this I love seeing stuff like this, not because necessarily that I would ever buy it, because that would be a gigantic waste of money for me.
Exactly.
There's there's no way that I would ever, at least with my skill level right now. I mean, precision shooting for me is that's like 2 phases away from me right now, right?
Yeah.
And so, this is something that it is cool to look at this and be like, yeah, that would be awesome. One day if I was to ever do that, maybe when I'm like really, really old and I'm too lazy to like move around, I'll just be like, I'm really good at this. So, but yeah, that's great, man. Yeah, I love your take on it. I think it's really cool. All right, where we go next?
Next one is the FN EVOLYS, I think. Basically, it's the evolution of the M249, the saw, and kind of the evolution of the M240. It looks like they kind of mixed them together. So it's a light squad machine gun. So this is obviously a class 3 type of thing, or military specific. I guess they dropped the first concept 3 or 4 years ago. The M240 and 249 are old. Like they said in this article, I mean, FN has owned the light machine gun market for a long time. Like we always think of the M60, the hog of Vietnam lore. It was crazy heavy and actually had a lot of reliability issues. So the 60 got phased out by the M240. Like I think it's before I joined. I joined in 2002. I wasn't a door kicker, so I wasn't really privy to all the small arms stuff. But I think the Air Force got relegated a lot of the 60s because we'd see them on the Humvees at the front gate, if they were doing an exercise. But the real door kickers, the Army, they phased over to the 240s, I think in the late 80s or in the 90s, after Persian Gulf, which we're going to go there with one of the next products, but I won't skip ahead. So the I can't even, I don't know how to say it, EVOLYS, I think. It's pretty slick. It looks like it's got I can't tell if the rail in the front, if it's monolithic or if it's 2 pieces. But it's got a full length rail. So it looks like they've got a thermal along with the scope, on their, the one they've got here in the article, which is on the firearms blog. Basically, one thing they did is they were using the help me out, Wade. What is FN's rifle? Not the M4, but the other, their homebrew.
Did you really just ask me what some machine gun or what some kind of specific firearm question is for the FN? I don't remember.
No, we can edit that out. I definitely didn't ask that.
No, we're recording, so we're not editing. We're not editing that out. We're gonna be like we're in a presidential debate, and we're just gonna forget about it.
Oh dear Lord, I didn't watch it.
So. Me neither. I didn't either. But I know someone was forgetting something for sure.
The SCAR, the FN
SCAR. Yeah. Haley talks about the SCAR all the time.
I know. Yeah, no, the SCAR. The first iteration of the EVOLYS had a SCAR stock, and it looks like I don't know if it's that one specifically, but that's what it looks like. But anyway, they took that off and they just put the standard M4 stock on there, with quick disconnects on there. Probably a really good move because every shooter in the military has used some version of the M4 since 2001, 2002.
Yeah, almost all GWAT is the M4.
Yeah, it's all G.
So yeah, yep. So like everybody.
Yeah, I shot A2s at basic training. But the next time I qualified, we were already using M4s in the early 2000s. So everyone's using an M4 stock.
Yeah.
So they went with an M4 stock. Looks like they replaced, what do you call those? Fiberglass bipod with aluminum.
The big thing I think that's changed, and it just goes back to what we just were talking about with that scope, is the optics, right? So like the thermal. Going to thermal on this, or just the even on the machine guns they're getting super squirrely with the optics, right? It's just a whole different world now where
totally
it's like you just put the dot on where you want to shoot, and that puts you get it there, And so it is pretty amazing, kind of just the advancements even in the last 10 years just on the optics side.
Oh yeah, and the rail is fantastic. Squad machine guns even at the beginning of GWAT was still almost all open sights. And now that they can mix and match anything, thermals, night vision, standard Trigicon optics, whatever, they put them on there, and just makes it a much more lethal platform. So looks pretty cool. I doubt that I'll ever be using one again.
Well, yeah, and again, it's there are people that I'm sure is like they'll go through the process to be able to qualify to be able to get one of these somehow, right?
Yeah.
And that's your thing. But I always find it interesting. I don't know if you've watched any of the Ukraine footage, and I try not to, but I've watched some of it, and some of it is just so old school. Like it's almost like we're going back in time, right? Like a lot of the stuff that we're talking about is very high tech, and it's like, yeah, that's great. But then you look at some of the things in the field that are being used right now, and it's literally like caveman, I'm holding 2 grenades in each hand and I'm just running through this trench, and it's incredible. It's unbelievable.
And most of the hardware being used in that war is still Soviet bloc stuff from the Cold War era. Like it really is not very impressive by modern standards. So.
Still works.
Yeah.
Still working. So, but yeah, and that's the thing too, is I think that there's this, and like, so this machine gun, obviously I'm never going to shoot this gun, right? Unless I go to a range and they have it somewhere. But like you can geek out on all the optics, and you can geek out on all of the like the bells and whistles and get real gooch with it. But at the end of the day, it's like if you just need to know how to use iron sights and put your rounds on target. And
I agree with that.
And that's how I've always looked at it. Like I really resisted putting an optic on one of my guns. I finally put an optic on one of my guns, and that's just because on one of my handguns. And it's just because I felt like, okay, I'm good enough with the old timey, battle sights or iron sights, like an old timey battleship, that I'm like, all right, let's put an optic on one of these. And I don't get into the gooch. I'm not good enough to get into the gooch. How's that?
Well, neither am I, if it makes you feel better.
Well, it doesn't.
Good.
You should be better. You should be better. All right. Let's go on this next one. This makes me laugh. The Cookie Monster Safariland limited edition chocolate chip 6,000 holsters.
Yes, that's what I was alluding to earlier about the original, the first Iraqi war. So I slipped in. They had just gotten rid of the chocolate chip camo patterns when I joined. So when we got desert camo issued, it was the tricolor, not the chocolate chip, which I thought was really disappointing because I thought the chocolate chip was fantastic. I don't know if it was actually worthwhile or anything in the desert, and I don't even care. It looks awesome. So this is Safariland's kind of their regular. Now here's a little caveat. I think it should be unlawful that you use anything besides a Beretta 92 or an M9 in that, because that was a standard sidearm at the time. I'm not even a fanboy of that, but it just seems wrong to put anything else in that. So, but I've heard great things about the Safariland's retention holsters. They actually work. You know, cops don't lose their sidearms when they're scuffling with those. Are they going to wear a chocolate chip on the beat? Probably not. This is clearly just for fun, you know, for range bosses or something, but it is cool. I mean, the chocolate chip pattern was iconic.
Yeah, and that's a cool thing is like you can individualize whatever you want, right? You can make it unique to yourself. And if like I would never do this chocolate chip thing because I don't. First of all, I didn't even know it was in reference to like the old camel pattern. I was just like, this looks like a cow, right? It looks like they took a cow, like or a Palomino horse, and made this out of leather, right?
Yeah,
you know, and also too is I write for a holster company, so I always feel like I'm cheating on them whenever I talk positively about someone else's holsters. But Safariland is, you know, I mean, they're gigantic.
Yeah, they're big boys.
And that's one thing, you know, talking about it from a business perspective, right? Is if you can have your core offer work so well in a business that then you can kind of take some flyers on some things. That's, I think, when business becomes really fun. Is that when you figure out your core offer, you got your bread and butter, and you know, I may have talked about this before, but take for example, like on the beer side, Allagash, it's a brewery up in Maine. You know, they have Allagash White, which is like a Belgian white ale, which is responsible for 90% of their sales. So they have other beers or whatever, but 90% of what they sell is Allagash White. But that allows them then to just get real squirrely with everything else because they plan off the money they make off of the Allagash White. And then we went to their brewery and they had this open air brewery room where they were getting wild yeast in from the windows to help to ferment the beer, but that takes a really long time because there's not a lot of wild yeast in the air where they were, and just stuff like that though. And that's kind of what I think about whenever I see something like this. It's a company that's in the groove, and they're like someone was just like, F it, let's do a chocolate chip 6000. And I like how they call it the 6000, right? It's like, we're going to call it the chocolate chip 6000. Like, so I don't necessarily like the chocolate chip 6000 as a product for myself personally, but I love that some dude, probably a dude, sat in a room and was like, we're going to make a chocolate chip 6000 holster. And somebody else was like, that's the best idea I've heard today. That's an awesome idea, right?
Like
they did it. Here it is.
Those boomer vets are going to kill for this. Guarantee that thing only gets sold in 1911s and Beretta 92s.
Are you serious?
That's just my thought. That's my
your thought. I thought this.
Yeah,
was
it's going to be the
FUD. I thought this was like an anti-FUD holster.
No, dude, these are the veterans that were there in 1990 and 91, and then I think Mogadishu was they were still using chocolate chips in Moog.
Well, and that's the chocolate chip problem. Is when I think as a normal human, when I think chocolate chip, I think cookie, I think Cookie Monster. I think this is going to be a Range Mom is going to be doing that. Like, you know,
I feel like you're insinuating that I'm not a normal human. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting from this.
Once you're in the military, it never gets out of you. So
no,
it's like, you know, and so it's
an illness.
Well, it's not an illness. Yeah, it's an illness, sure.
It is an illness.
But also it gives you a perspective that stays with you. So for example, it's like I have no visceral reaction to the chocolate chip camo pattern because I never was like disappointed that I didn't get to wear it. I didn't even know it was a thing.
Yeah.
I thought they were talking about cookies and this is for kids or something. Right?
No,
like, right?
No,
but that's why
I have camo problem.
That's right. That's right. And that's why I have you on the show is because I come from one perspective and you come from the opposite perspective. Between the two of us, we cover everybody. And that's what's so great. So I just like the name. And I think about it I like the chocolate chip 6000.
I'll let you just keep thinking that's what it's talking about. It's just cookies. It's cookies.
Well, you got to protect your cookies, man. Anything else that you would like to talk about with the chocolate chip 6000?
Oh, besides that, I mean, it's a regular 6000, so you can have red dots, and I'm sure they make it for every pistol. Like you can tell the picture here, it's a 19 with a light and a red dot. But I still think that's kind of sacrilege for the pattern. It should only be a 92 or a 1911.
Only a 92 with iron sights, no optic, no lights. Sorry. My dog was. I didn't mean to pause. I meant to mute because my dog was getting a. My dog likes this chocolate chip moo pattern. She thinks it's
This looks delicious. Are you gonna feed it to me?
well, my border collie thinks it's a cow that needs to be
Herded.
herded. Yeah. All right. What's next?
I think we have a rangefinder. Wilcox rangefinder is going to be supplying micro rangefinders for German special forces, which these look incredibly useful. They go on any standard Picatinny rail. You get a little remote control that you can tape to your weapon wherever you want it. Click it on, and that sucker tells you a range on whatever you point it at, which is really, really cool. It really wasn't too much in the article about it. Just said that in February, the German special forces were soliciting for a rangefinder for their weapons. Wilcox Industries, they got the bid, and they are supplying German special forces. This is something that if you got the dollars for it, which it didn't have an MSRP because that's not the point of it, but I can only imagine where that's at, could be very useful for all kinds of different people. If you're trying to shoot an antelope out in, western Nebraska, and you're guessing it's somewhere between 700 and 900 yards away, it's pretty rad that you can paint it with that and know exactly, oh, it's at 789. Nice. And set your scope to that. So
yeah, stuff like that's cool that it short circuits the short circuits the math, right? But then also then I always have the argument again where it's like, well, you've got to know how to do it the old fashioned way, because what if it doesn't work? Right? Like what if it breaks, Like there is this over reliance on gear, I think, sometimes. And the other thing too with stuff like this is let's say that you're looking at it from a lack of the rule of law has broken down, and you're just kind of like you're on your property and you want to see what's going on or see how far someone is away or whatever. Sometimes these things can reveal where you're at, right? So it's because what does it use, infrared basically to do that, or to ping it, or if you've got you can basically have some challenges if you don't have these scopes set up correctly with regards to security and stuff like that.
I have to actually look at the website. I don't know. I think it might be a non-illuminating laser, but I'm not totally sure what practice it's using. Yeah, it's a laser ranging device. Like I said, I believe it's an IR laser. So
at night you're seeing it basically. You've got nods, right?
Yeah. So I mean, if your enemy has them, they're going to see it
in Minecraft.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, and that's the thing too, is like all these things have their positives and their negatives, and like the two negatives I always see of stuff like this is just learn to do it with the math if you're going to do it, right? But I mean, again, I'm sure there's reasons there's tactical reasons to have it, other than the fact that it's just fun, and an antelope is not gonna see it. So yeah, that's always good too.
It looks like it's got a red laser as well, so you can go between the two.
I feel like we're on the super gooch version of our articles today, because everything has been like super, super high end stuff that I would very rarely, like, probably not use, but
yeah,
you know what I mean? Because I mean, this is going to be in the thousands of dollars this thing, whatever.
Oh yeah. Well, this is government. These are military contracts, so they don't really care about price tags.
That's true. But still, I mean, they are pretty cool. It is pretty cool though.
Oh, it's super cool. Absolutely. I mean, that you paint your target and, it has a little visual display facing you, and you can put it anywhere. You can put it on the top of your rail, side of the rail. You can put on a rail on top of the scope. And it just tells you exactly what you just painted, whatever distance is. And that is really cool. I mean,
you just go with a cheap version and get like a golf one that does this. Like, don't like, and they have like the golf range finders where you put it on the pin and it just tells you how far it is, basically.
Imagine being the procurement officer for the German special forces and you telling your commanding officer that that's your idea. And then you fiend yourself jobless.
Heinrich, come here.
You find yourself unemployed immediately.
This is how I can't do a German accent. I should be able to. I watched Oppenheimer last night, so there were some Germans in there, right?
There's some Germans. Anyway, yeah, pretty high-end rig. Cool. Definitely not something I'll be putting on my, $400 AR-15 anytime soon.
Well,
I finally splurged and bought a Vortex Optics.
Everyone's $400 or blend AR-15 from Palmetto, is always has more money on it in the attachments than the actual gun itself. Almost everyone, and that's actually
Oh
It's
yeah.
actually a good thing because the platform is so, no, if you're a military person or like a hardcore shooter or whatever, it's not a good fit for you. But like for normal humans, like that's fine. You're never gonna outuse that gun.
The cheap budget tier AR-15 of today is vastly better than almost any military armament in history, up until now, because the production, the tooling, the metals, the alloys are so good. None of this is done by hand. This is all done by machines. It's high quality stuff. I mean, it's crazy to think that your, cheap AR that you picked up, on sale is better than almost every military weapon up until the past 20 years.
Well, don't say that. You're gonna get all the guns rights people freaking out with that comment, right? Oh,
Let me predicate. This is just in terms of quality and manufacturing. That goes for everything in life, including your KitchenAid
in your car. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing too is like that's why I think about like the Glock 19, right? So
yes,
the Glock 19 is millions and maybe billions of rounds have been put through Glock 19s and
probably
Glock
billions
19 clones, right?
Yep.
And so like that is so much. It's like the AK, right? There's so much feedback from use in the field that it's going to be great, and then it works, and then that's it. It's just it's sick. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on talking about.
And you can always buy magazines for $10 for it or whatever, 10 or $15.
Exactly. And everyone has AR parts and Glock parts and SIG parts and all that good stuff. So
yep.
But it is funny when you come to bring it back around, you will put more money on gear on these guns now on your attachments than the actual gun itself.
Yep. Not me personally, but me generally, because I'm cheap.
Well, but I think a lot of people do that. I mean, if you just get an optic or whatever. Are you hearing my dog, by the way? Do you hear my dog?
Nah, I don't really hear.
Oh, that's good. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk. Speaking of optics, let's go to our last one here, which is the Vortex optic.
I just gave Vortex a free plug because I just bought a Vortex red green dot. I can't remember what they call it, but it's the one that looks just like the aim point that's on M4s. And it's awesome. I love it. I mean, that was me coming off of, buying like really low budget red dots. I moved up to that one. I'm like, wow, I've really been missing out. You set your bar incredibly low. You're always set up for, appreciating the next tier up.
I think I have a Vortex. I don't even remember what I got. I think I put a Vortex on my 19. I think I have a Vortex Venom. Is that what that is? The Vortex Venom?
Yeah, I think so.
19, yeah.
All right. So the Viper has been around for a long time because I've been eyeballing these for projects forever. And this one is just this is an updated version of it. It's another generation. So it's kind of like, like you're just talking about Glock, you have the same basic platform because it works really well, but you make updates as technology continues to evolve. I think what they were saying in this one from the article and from their little presser, the Vortex presser, is that they're trying to kind of marry a hunting and a tactical scope into one. So appeal to a more broad crowd with this. This one this is just the Viper in general, I think, HD. So they have a 2x10x42. So that's going to be kind of in your fairly typical hunting ranges. So max magnification, 10, a 3-15x44, a 5-25x50. So that's definitely going to be more on the that's going to be more in the competition realm, because 25 power generally gets you too close for an object that is moving, like when you're hunting. So that's why most power settings don't go above like 12 for hunting specific scopes, because it's too granular, because those are really made for shooting a target that's not moving at a long distance, not shooting an animal that's skittish and looking around.
Well, so, yeah, like you've got to get close as you can, to a deer or whatever else you're shooting. You know what I'm saying? It's like you don't want to be trying to shoot it from a bajillion miles away, because it's just, if you miss and you don't put the animal down, it's cruel to the animal. Animal runs off. So it's I think you should be a good enough hunter to be able to get close enough to use a normal scope.
I think generally speaking, 200 yards is about the I mean, there are people that make, like really actually good hunters that take really long shots. In some places like the western plains of Kansas, Oklahoma, and Nebraska, and then the Dakotas. I mean, some of the like
Yeah.
antelope are one that are notorious. You're not going to get closer than like 500 yards
Yeah. I mean, if
because
you're,
they're so
yeah.
skittish.
Yeah. But I mean, if you're in that area and that's obviously it's going to be just like everything else, it's going to be, how you're going to have perspective on where you are and whatever. But for like normal human beings are like, I'm
Yes.
going to go hunt deer for the first
In
time,
my
right?
backyard, and
Right.
I put a
Yeah,
bag of
exactly.
corn out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Right. Like,
That's literally talking about me. All
I'm
right.
gonna
That's
I'm gonna
actually
go
me.
I'm gonna go put a a blind up by the salt lick over here, and I'm just gonna sit here and drink some beer and like give me a break. Like, yeah, okay, you can do that. That's great because you have 6,000 deer on your property. But
That's
like,
not
yeah,
too far off.
hey, but no, but that's right. You don't need again, and I think everyone always wants to jump to. It's sexy to jump to the end of things. You know what I
Yes.
mean? It's
Yeah.
always like everyone wants to go to Z. Okay.
Yep.
But you can't go to Z unless you go through A through D, right? And so that's the
Yep.
thing and I see so many people on the range with this gear that they're not good enough to be using. You know what I mean? It doesn't make a
Right.
difference. Like,
Yeah.
it's such a granular difference. And but this is cool. Like when I see something like this, I'm like, okay, this is something I think you could work to, and it's reasonable price, and it looks like it's a great object.
Really well proven. Vortex has been around, I think, like 15 years now, and they make a good product. It is a affordable tier, but it's really hot. It's good stuff.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
here's an interesting question for you too. So like they're trying to kind of split the baby here between like, okay, you're going to get one optic and you can do hunting or tactical with it,
mhm.
right? Um, I kind of follow along the lines of just like I'm going to have my AR is my tactical gun. Like maybe I get, a Savage or a Remington or whatever for my deer rifle or whatever, and then I treat them separately, right?
Mhm.
So that's kind of how I think of it. So when I pick up this tool, this is what I'm using this tool for. But do you think of that the same way, or do you think more of like, no, it's better to be able to have a cross platform where you could use it for like, let's just have an AR, and if we want to trick it out for hunting, we can do that, and if we want to trick it out for tactical, we could do that. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Um, my perspective is maybe a little different. I have some kids that are getting into, so my daughter's 14. She's very interested. One of my daughters, my second oldest, very interested in getting in deer hunting. And um, so for me, like an AR-10 or an AR-15 in one of the deer calibers, like not 223, but in like a 6.5 Grendel or a 6.8 SPC, or even a 300 blackout or a 7.62 by 39 makes a lot of sense. Especially most of our shots in our back pasture, it's pretty narrow. It's only about 75 yards wide. And so they would be kind of chip shots anyway. So a 30 caliber round an AR-15 would work, or even a 350 Legend would work well back there. Um, but also is a great self-defense platform. Of course, then I would probably just be swapping out uppers. An AR-10 in either 6.5 Creedmoor or a 308 or even a 243 Winchester AR-10 upper would be fantastic for what I'm doing out here. And for that, then I think definitely having a multi-function scope works out, because a 308 has still got a fair amount of kick if you're a young woman. But in an AR-10, it's completely manageable and would open up some doorways to more than one type of shooting with one platform. So um, the long answer is I've lived out here in the hinterland for a while, so the lines are definitely more blurry. I'm 4.3 million times more likely to shoot a coyote with my AR-15 than to ever engage a human. All right. And I speak from experience because I've engaged a lot of coyotes out here. So for me, there's definitely a lot of crossover.
Yeah, well, and that's always one of those, it's always one of those things where it's when you need it, right? And
Yep.
so, and you will probably never need it, but you always want to be that person that is, if you do, then you've got it. And so I guess I guess that's sort of like the answer is it depends. For me, I'm not
It depends.
super
Yeah.
mechanically savvy, so like I don't like to take apart anything. I'm very slow when I clean my stuff. Like so I'm not switching out uppers, right? Like I'm like, this is the platform. I've got
Oh
it
man,
set, so
that's the
like
best
I'm like,
part.
well, I'll just buy another one, right? So like this is my tactical one, this is my hunting one, right? So so like I'm taking a scout course this fall, and so like I'm actually gonna kind of build out a new gun for that, because the gun that I have
Nice.
right now is not, it's not a reach you out and touch someone gun, right? So, and it's like, I just want to have the two guns. Like one of them's like, all right, let's go run around the woods, and the other one is something goes bump in the night. And
Are you
that's
going to
kind
do a
of
rattle can? Are you going to spray paint it? You should spray paint it.
no, because I'm not artsy and craftsy like that. Like I'm not good. I would make it look so bad. I would make it look so bad. So just black is fine. So
All right.
they'll probably, maybe they'll make me do it, but I'm old, man. I don't care what anybody else thinks. Like I'm not a FUD. Like but I wouldn't care if I showed up with a 1911. I'd be like, or 1911. I still haven't bought one, but I know I'm gonna get you to buy one. Do you own one 1911?
No, I've never even shot one.
It's gonna be a running joke. I'm just gonna be like, it's time for your 1911, John.
If I could stop my bad habit of buying tractors, I probably would already have several.
Well, tractors are gonna hold their value, bud. You're gonna be, I think some things are gonna happen here in the next 10 years. You're gonna be very thankful you have those tractors.
Yep. And I've been picking up vintage firearms whenever I find them at estate sales too, because again, that's a market that historically almost always appreciates.
Yeah.
Collectible.
What people also don't understand too with your diesel tractors is you can trick out a diesel tractor to run a generator. Like a lot of people don't even think
it's just a PTO attachment. Just hook it up on the back and turn it on, and you got a generator.
Yeah, and diesel obviously keeps for a long time.
My diesel is a very old tractor, so I can also very
you can
easily
pour like canola oil on that thing and it will run. You know,
probably
what I mean?
would.
Like,
It probably would. I mean, has basically no technology on the tractor at all.
That's again, that the tractors they have now is like, if you don't make your payment on it, they can shut it off. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, no, I'm not a fan of those. No, mine are very, very vintage. My
That's
newest is a 79.
That's the same thing with everyone in the electric car, right? They're like, no, if it has to update software, it's like people
You're driving an iPhone with wheels,
and they can shut it off. Like someone can shut it off. Like a hacker can shut it off. The company can shut it off. The government can shut it off. Like you're crazy.
Yes,
it's the same people like, I'm going to buy subscription heated seats for my BMW. I was like, all right, man, that's insane. Like,
yeah,
why would
insane.
Why would I buy something and then have to pay you a subscription fee for part of it to work?
The older I get, the more I appreciate older stuff, like iron, like the iron sights argument. Like, well, I don't have to keep a batch of CR123A batteries on hand because I know that my iron sights don't need a battery. They're always going to work.
But I will say this though about the Vortex Venom. That battery lasts for freaking ever.
Oh yeah, I mean
you can leave it on
thousands of hours,
lasts forever, and it, like you put the shakes awake, so you just turn it on and then it goes into sleep mode, and then one of those you buy a pack of batteries for $10 and you probably have 10 years of batteries, right?
Yeah, it's true.
It's insane.
It is true.
And then I just do coaxes so that I can I still can shoot the iron sights with it right down or not. So even if it's long or not. So that is, I will say that I finally did break down and say that sight is pretty cool. And the other reason
I do find myself looking at 1911s quite often, actually, and that's not a joke.
Yeah, well, the only other new guns I'm going to buy is I still got to get the Remington 1022, right? Or the Ruger, sorry,
Ruger, sir, Ruger.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the Ruger, and then just this new AR, and then I'm actually set for a while. So no more new guns for me because my wife would be like,
"Wait, what exactly do you need these for?"
Yeah,
like, reasons,
of course. So.
You won't go wrong with the 1022. It's it's fantastic.
Well, the 1022 and then the 1022 takedown. The takedown is really cool. Like the whole thing fits in and you get that Magpul stock.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's sick. And I can't believe for a lot of those entry level guns, the cost is coming down so fast.
Yeah.
Like I was sending you those links for that one shotgun that was
like $120 or something.
It was less. It was almost
110.
$99.
It's 110.
Yeah, it was like $99. I thought it was almost $99, but like it was like $109 or something. It was insane.
Yeah.
It was like it's insane. So, but anyway, though, yeah. So we will kind of Gucci with our articles today. But I do think that's one thing. I think a good way to look at that as a person, if you're thinking about getting into firearms, is don't worry. You're never going to outrun your gear. You're never not going to have things to learn. It's just that there's so much depth to it.
and especially, I don't know if you've ever done any hand loading or been around someone that does. I mean, that is like the whole reloading and hand loading. That is like, you could spend a lifetime learning that and still not even scratch the surface of all the things you can do.
The only thing I've ever been around with that was in North Dakota, obviously, is people would for shotgun shells, is they would load their own shells, right? And I feel like that's easier to me. And this may be wrong because I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to do any of it. But to me, that seems that there's a lot more give in loading a shotgun shell than there would be in trying to do like a 5.56 round or something. Like, I don't know if that's true or not, but it seems to me it'd be easier to just to kind of pack it in there like it's an old musket.
It wasn't that hard. When I still had a 9 to 5 job, my employee was a major hunter, big time. He's working on doing his second safari, and he brought in his gear, and we actually were reloading. He took his own reloads to a safari, used his own loads because he knew what knew what he was going to hunt, and so he actually was tailor making loads for the hunts over there. So I mean, crazy stuff.
Well, and that's when you're getting into the granular, where you're
yeah,
a master craftsman, where you're like, you
Yes.
know the difference between your load and just a commercial load or whatever. And I mean, that's like you're getting into crazy ass autistic ends of the spectrum for that stuff.
Well, he was showing me it was a 338. I can't remember if it's a Remington Magnum or Winchester Magnum, what the caliber is, but it's a 338, big Magnum rifle. And he was showing me the safari rounds that you can buy from Cabela's, the safari loads. It was like $100 for 20 rounds. So he was saving a lot of money by cranking out his own, because when you get into those calibers, if you're hunting T-Rex or something, those are not cheap,
Well,
So-
and also too, I think it's just something cool. It adds to the experience, right? It's like,
Yes. Mhm.
I did this myself. I did and that's the one thing about hunting that people will never understand if you've never done it, is that the end part of the hunt is the almost the least important part of the hunt.
Right.
It's the sharing we're going to go on this hunt with your kids, or you're sharing the moment with your friends. We're going to go on this hunt, and the planning, and then getting everything together, and the anticipation, and then the being out in the wild and experiencing everything, and then having everything come together in that moment. It's like baseball in that way, right?
Right.
Where it's like it's the whole experience of that's why watching baseball on TV, unless you're a purist, is boring. But going to a game is always fun, even if you don't like baseball. It's because
I talked to my wife about that just a couple nights ago. Yeah. How it's just so different.
It's the experience, right? And then there's the flip side of it too with the hunting, is that it funds all the conservation. It actually helps the animals to thrive. And so that's just part of it, where anything you can add to the experience for yourself. Like if you do your own rounds or whatever, I just think that's cool. If that's your thing, that's your thing.
Mm-hmm. It definitely is thing. So
not me, because I'm not mechanically inclined that way, and I would definitely hurt myself or hurt someone else, or just have it not work. Right.
Probably just as well that you leave it up to the manufacturers.
I know exactly. I know my own. I mean, listen, there are things that I geek out and I go real deep on, and people look at me like I'm a total mutant on, but that's not one of them for me. So, but that's what the cool thing about firearms is there are so many different entry points, and there's so many different points where you can go deep on, which is why we can talk about it every week and just have a fun time every week. And well, John, any closing thoughts, or are we good to go, man? I thought it was pretty good today. It was really good seeing you. I'm glad you're back safe.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to be back, and I encourage you to not go places where wild dogs roam the campgrounds. That is definitely the first thing I encourage you to not do. I thought that our products today were interesting, a little out of my wheelhouse, but still really cool to see that, the technology is available to average nerds like you and me, that if we chose to go that deep down the rabbit hole, we could be shooting targets a mile away. And that's rad.
There's a lifetime of lessons. There's a lifetime of lessons and legacy in firearms. And I just never get tired of talking about it. I'm thankful to be able to talk about it with you. And we do this every few weeks, and just glad you're back safe, dude. So good to talk to you, man.
Yep. Good to be back.
All right. We'll talk soon.
All right, man.